Hi there. Let's take a quick look at the topic of multinationals. What are multinationals? Why have they become so much more important over the years? And what are the benefits and drawbacks of them for economies in which they operate? You could probably name a whole list of well-known multinational businesses like Walmart and Netflix and Shell and others. And an increasing number of them you might not know so well, but they are multinationals in terms of their scope of operations emerging from fast-growing economies like China. And what defines a multinational company, or MMC, shorten it to MMC, is that the business has operations in more than one country. It's not about who you sell to or where you sell to. A UK business might sell to many countries overseas, but it's not a multinational company until it has operations in more than one country. And the reasons why MMCs have become more important to the business world and to the global economy over the years are various. One part of it is just the rapid growth of emerging economies, the likes of Vietnam and China and Brazil and India. Global brands have expanded into them, partly to try to reduce their production costs, to reduce their unit costs by getting economies of scale. Also in search of demand, trying to open operations in countries where demand is growing faster than in mature economies like the US and Europe and the UK. But there are other reasons too. You might operate or open an operation in an overseas country in order to avoid protectionism. And of course, we've seen external growth strategies being a key part of MMCs growing their operations around the world. You take over another business in a different country, automatically that takes you into a different scale and scope of your operations as an MMC. Let's just spend a minute or two looking at, therefore, the benefits and some of the drawbacks of MMCs. It might be worth just pausing this video on each of on this slide and the next one to jot down one or two benefits. Not all of these will apply, of course, and you might argue about some of them, but it's often said that MMCs, in terms of the countries in which they operate, provide significant employment, significant training and expertise and skills which domestic industries and domestic firms might not otherwise be able to achieve or provide. And MMCs therefore add to the economic activity of the countries in which they operate, adding to the host country's GDP. You can also argue that they provide an incentive to domestic firms to compete against them. Perhaps one of the most significant impacts or significant benefits of multinational companies is that they earn or should earn significant revenues and profits, and therefore be able to pay significant tax revenues to the host economy, to the government of the host economy. Well, of course, that's not always the case. Therefore, the last bullet point on this slide, which highlights one or two drawbacks of MMCs, is that there are situations where MMCs can organise their affairs, which means they pay relatively little tax on the profits and the revenues that they earn. So-called tax avoidance, which, though clearly legal, is, you might argue, unethical. There's also an argument that MMCs damage, potentially threaten domestic businesses. Not all domestic businesses will be able to compete with the likes of McDonald's and Starbucks and Apple and the rest. And perhaps, depending on the MMC itself, you might argue that they don't necessarily feel a responsibility to behave as ethically or in as socially responsible way as domestic businesses. Perhaps you might argue that some MMCs in some industries impose their culture on the host country. That's certainly been an argument against some MMCs, the likes of McDonald's, but a lot of the fast food and other consumer MMC brands have been. It's been argued that they have imposed their culture on the domestic economy, domestic society. And a final criticism is that MMCs can take profits earned away from the host country and remit them back to their domestic economy through all sorts of different methods. It's a balanced argument, isn't it? You can easily argue that MMCs have significant economic benefits to an economy, but as we've seen with the arguments on tax avoidance against the likes of Google and others, There are drawbacks from allowing MNCs to dominate certain sectors in a host economy. There we go. Don't need to be an expert on these, but hopefully that's a useful overview and an introduction to the topic of multinationals.